family, it is so good for us to be back together again. Welcome to another episode of Courtney's Corner. Growing up, we all learned about the civil rights movement. It was a time of struggle for social justice that took place mostly in the 50s and the 60s for blacks to gain equal rights under the law. It was a divided time in American history, to say the least. We were taught about people like Malcolm X and Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and Ida B. Wells, their fight for equality. We also learned about the peaceful protests, marches in Washington, Selma, sit-ins, and other demonstrations that led to change in our society. The list goes on. The history is rich and deep. And if you ask a kid like me, you imagine yourself being in some of those stories, wondering what would you do if you had the opportunity to stand up before inequality and fight like these war heroes did. Writer Stephanie J. Shaw said, each generation has to write its own history. Fast forward 50 years, and unfortunately, we're still dealing with some of these issues. Others fought so hard to overcome, just in different form. Like police brutality, voter suppression, and racism still exists today. For millennials, we've had to march, boycott, and do other things to make our voices heard and lead the change by ourselves. Movements like Black Lives Matter, founded in 2013, allow us to do that. So I'll pose the question, what does civil rights look like now? What does it look like right now? We'll have some answers for you right after this break. Here, don't go nowhere. You're here on Courtney's Corner.
So why do we like Courtney's Corner? Why do you like it?
Hard discussions. Stuff that we want to talk about, but we just don't know quite how to say it.
When the war is won, we will be sure.
You know, like for me per se, you know, I come from East New York, Brooklyn. Fortunately, I never had to experience what it was to have a cop stop me and frisk me. But that's, like I said, we are all different in our circumstances and what we're doing in our environment.
And that's why I like Courtney, because he really knows how to touch on topics and he gets the right people to discuss the issues that affect current society. So yeah, that's why I like listening, watching, and being part of the show.
Civil disobedience, which was perfected under Dr. King through the civil rights movement, is still a practice that is being deployed today to achieve social discussion and as a tool used to fight against social injustice.
When I looked at the civil rights movement back then, I looked at them like Martin Luther King and all of them. They had a standard that they stood by. Even the way they conduct themselves, the way they dress.
What would you do if you had the opportunity to stand up before inequality and fight like these war heroes did? Writer Stephanie J. Shaw said, each generation has to write its own history. Fast forward 50 years, and unfortunately, we're still dealing with some of these issues. Others fought so hard to overcome, just in different forms. Joining me is none other than Chris Banks. He is the public advocate of the East New York diaspora, one of the really good friends of mine. Everybody, show him some love. Thank you so much for being here, my brother. No problem. As always, it's a pleasure to have. We're talking about the civil rights movement, the new civil rights movement. First of all, before we start, let's tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and what do you do?
Well, my name is Chris Banks. I'm a local community leader, activist out in the East New York community. Born and raised, I run a nonprofit organization named East New York United Concerned Citizens, and we do a lot of advocacy. We service the senior population, and we're just a fighter for the everyday folk in our community, those who are, who are defenseless. And that's what we built our reputation on, fighting for folks and fighting for the liberation of young black African Americans.
Okay, and I'm happy to have somebody that proceeds. Oh man, this is great. So let's get into this conversation. We were talking about this in our last episode, and even off air today, we've been having this conversation about this new civil rights movement.
Right.
What is this? You know what I'm saying? If you can you break it down for us? In your thoughts, in your mind, what do you think this is, and how has it come to pass? Are we losing anything? Have we lost anything, and can we get it back?
Well, I don't think we've lost anything per se. Obviously, the fact that, well, listen, and I think the reality is that we won't. The new civil rights movement will never look like the old civil rights movement. It won't be a singular or unitary head a person running the civil rights movement, or this new civil rights movement. It's, to me, made up of multiple heads that have multiple opinions, and they're really fighting towards the same cause and the same goal,
Right.
and obviously fighting towards social justice.
Okay. And what do you think? Why do you think we are starting such a different type of movement? Like, I feel as though, I guess generational-wise, the gaps have changed, but I feel as though, you know, we had such strong leaders,
Right.
such as, you know, Malcolm X, Martin Luther, Rosa Parks, and those pathways were paved,
Right.
and then it like just stopped, right? There's no one who's now the head, and you said because there's multiple leaders
Right.
who are now involved in this. Who do you consider to be some of these leaders who are taking? What are they doing now to kind of evoke these different changes that we need to have in our communities?
Well, I believe there are multiple leaders that exist. I myself am obviously a leader in my own right, and there's a host of folks I can name. You know, folks who've been out there on the front line fighting for environmental justice, you know, fighting against economic injustice, and on a whole host of issues that have affected our community.
Right.
I think one of the key things now is that we have, we kind of have to embrace this younger leadership that that is there,
Right.
and I think there's to a degree there's a battle between the old guard of the civil rights movement
Right.
with the younger guard, and you know, I think I guess in every generation or in every society that battle has to take place,
Right.
but I believe the issues are still the same. There were a lot of civil rights. I mean, we got to pay homage to the civil rights leaders that have come to pass and that have actually, you know, fought on a whole host of issues and brought us thus far. But again, we are still moving in the right direction, and we are still not at that point
Right.
where we can sit back. So, like folks like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X,
Right.
we're still living in their spirit,
Right.
because we hate to say it, we're still borrowing
From what they've done.
what they've done. I mean, civil disobedience, which was perfected under Dr. King
Right.
through the civil rights movement, is still a practice that is being deployed today
Right.
to achieve a social discussion,
Okay.
and to as a tool used to fight against social injustice.
So do you think that the newer generation has now just given it a name? I know, like we were talking about earlier, like this Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
Is that what we now consider to be this new civil rights movement, or are they separate?
It's the same. I think it's worded different because when under the civil rights movement during the '60s, you had the you had the poor man's campaign. You had different you had the same focus. I mean,
Right.
the civil rights movement was basically about breaking down social barriers or legal barriers that prevented Black folks from voting
Right.
or participating in society.
Okay.
That's what the civil rights movement was about. So now Black Lives Matter. Now I think the beast has taken on a new head. Now we're dealing with the criminal injustice system,
Right.
and this judicial juggernaut that basically has it's either they imprison you through mass incarceration or they kill you through the NYPD or
Right.
through the police department. So we are now saying, and I think it was stated under Dr. King and during the old civil rights movement, we just have narrowed it and we've put our own twist to
Right.
it. But we're still demanding justice. We're still standing up and speaking about injustices
Right.
that are plaguing our community, and we're speaking truth to power.
Right. I'm loving this conversation, by the way. But before we head on a quick break, I wanted to ask, the difference for me between what was and what is the support of the people.
Right.
And I also feel like, in part, what they had in the past civil rights movement was community. Like, we all had the same goals, we all wanted the same things, and they were willing to fight, you know, die if even to just so that way us now can have this life, right? And I feel as though what's happened now is it's shifted. Like we have leaders such as yourself, such as Reverend McCall. We have specific people out there who are doing these things, but the amount of support behind you guys are limited to what it was back then. Like you would have crowds back then because we all believed in the same thing. And now it says, if it's not on social media, then I don't want to hear about it. So how do you feel about that differential in regards to support?
I would say due to technology now, we're able to reach, folks don't have to be at a location to feel the effects.
Right.
But obviously, you still want the images that there are people that support the movement.
Right.
And yes, the level of support is not there. For I believe for the new civil rights movement, you call a rally, you get 20 people to show up. You call the rally in the '60s, you get hundreds of people to show up. And they also during the '60s they had their struggles too with participation.
Right.
But I believe at that time they were dealing with a different form of oppression to a degree, and for some reason they got it that collectivity was the only way to achieve social justice.
Okay.
Today we are still struggling with it, but we're still moving forward and fighting.
Okay, and before we go to break, my question is, and we'll let you answer when we come back, is do people really care anymore? Are people really, are they caring what's happening to the community, the things that are not being publicized on social media? You know what I mean? Like, we talk about, Trayvon Martin, we talk about Sandra Bland, we talk about all these different, Eric Gardner, the thing that happened and was like publicized, which got big crowds and big movements, and like people in our own community who like, what you're doing right now with Kevin McCall, like Chanel Lewis, like how of a turnout, of a difference that is, you know what I'm saying? So like, are people only caring when they can see it, when it's on the news, if BET is playing it, they're hearing it on the radio? Is that what's more important now, or doing things behind the scenes? Don't go anywhere though. We'll be right back from Courtney's Corner. Yes, fellas, we are back. We are back. If you wonder who this young man is over here to my left, that is Stanley McCray. Thank you so much for being here, Stanley. I appreciate you. Can you just give the viewers a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are? Okay,
my name is Stanley McCray. I'm from Andrews, South Carolina. I work in the school system as a paraprofessional, and I also work on Broadway at night as an infrared tech and as an usher.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're diving into the new civil rights movement, and we were having a discussion about the importance of community. And one of the things that I was saying to you was the differences, and like I said before, about what the support meant back then versus what it is now. So one of the things that I was asking was, do you think there's a difference between the civil rights movement versus what people are now calling Black Lives Matter? What do you think some of the differences are? Yeah, some of the differences are, for me, like I said, I see a lot of people today, they are angry versus trying to make change. Yeah, nobody seemed to be working towards like the goal that they worked towards back then. Like a friend and I, we always have a conversation of how to make change in our community. To me, I think change comes with the educational system. You have to teach black boys and black girls that they have to get into politics. Only sentence of representatives. If they're our color, they're our people, that's where change really starts. Okay. Well, we also do know that the civil rights movement lasted from 1950 to 1960. And within that span of 10 years, a lot, changed. A lot took place that in turn helped us to get where we are today. But still, we have a long way to go. Right. Now, with this whole Black Lives Matter thing that is happening now, do you feel the same longevity, or do you feel like this is going to be another trend or facade that's going to just wash away over time?
No, I think that the civil rights movement from the 60s and the 50s, it is actually, to me, it is spent into this new movement, which we call now the Black Lives Matter movement. and this type of frustration that exists that existed then. And I believe to me it's gonna last for the long haul,
Right.
because this is an ongoing struggle that continues to rear its head constantly, and I think the fire is even on stronger now than it was then.
Right.
Because we are systematically seeing the destruction of young black African men, American men, African men, and it gets to a point where we're fighting for our lives.
Right.
They fought for their lives during the 60s. At that time, it's fight for rights, voting rights, to be able to get the right to vote, to be able to sit at the counter with white folks, and now we have all that. I think we're living in a world where kind of this is the post civil rights era, but we're no longer fighting to sit at the counter. We are now fighting to get the proper due process before a judge or the criminal justice system.
Right. To kind of dive into that, let's talk about the work that you're doing with the case with Chanel Lewis, and. Okay, if you can, just discuss that a little bit.
Chanel Lewis is a young boy from East New York, out on Essex Street, and he's been accused of killing this young white girl
who was jogging
in Howard Beach, Karina Vetrano, and he was recently sentenced or found guilty and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
Right.
Recently, the last couple of days, and then yesterday he was sentenced. And from the beginning and onset of since the day he was arrested, we made a determination, and we said that Chanel didn't commit this murder.
Right.
That there was no possibility that he could ever commit this murder, and that he was being set up by the injustice system, the NYPD. Everybody was in cahoots to find someone that they can just railroad and pin this on. And it is it's really a revision of history, because we saw with Emmett Till, where Emmett Till was accused of whistling at a white woman, female, and then the white community, the men, they killed this kid. They tortured him and murdered him, and he didn't get justice until 60 years later. Like same thing we saw with the Central Park 5, really 7, where they actually were prosecuted and, in a sense, publicly lynched and lynched by the criminal injustice system, and then they got their case overturned. So Chanel Lewis is dealing with the same situation, and right now currently there's an appeal, and that it has been his defense has put forward an appeal to object and appeal the decision of the courts.
So one thing that I feel like is being taken place here that I feel is completely different is the support system of this entire situation. One thing I mentioned, this was the question before the break, was, do people care in this day and age? Are they caring about this young man knowing just by looking at the comparisons in the pictures that this person was nowhere near could have been the person that we see now? Chanel Lewis and this person in the picture has none of the same features, right? But are we at a point now in our present day being that if it's not broadcasted on social media, Good Morning America, the Breakfast Club, are they not caring anymore? Or because it's not a major hashtag, the movement is kind of being just brought back, and whoever's dealing with it in that time is just dealing with it. Like, I feel like, if I didn't, to be honest with myself, if I wasn't friends with you on Facebook and didn't follow you and just kind of following your work and what you do for the community, I wouldn't even know who this person was.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I did know in time of the jogger because he was on social media. So what I'm saying now is, like, how can we reverse that? Because I feel like back in the old civil rights movement, just in its entirety, that they knew what was going on at all times during the day. If somebody was being hung, or somebody was being stabbed, or somebody was being beaten or being locked up, and we came to the rescue. We were there. And I know before you were saying, we may not need as much because of social media, but I feel like that's part and problem.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what can we do? Because we need that momentum back. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's bringing this up. I feel like you were saying to me earlier about the coverage of it. People are being selective on who wants to talk about this. Who wants to take it there. And in reality, we should all take it there because we all know in our heart of hearts that this young man is innocent. You know what I mean? Like as you said, it's another Emmett Till discussion. So what do you think that we need to start doing now?
Well, I mean, the obvious issue is the fact that yes, there is a lack of attention that's being shown to this particular case. I think the black community is still, I guess in a sense, is still trying to catch up. Where if you look on the other side of the community, or the girl who was murdered, their community is up in arms. So I think we just have to continue to educate our folks. We got to continue to really tap into the black media that's there, that exists, that they're paying attention to. We're encouraging, that's why we're getting Miss Lewis, who's Chanel's mother, to visit some of the churches, some of the black churches. Because the only way we can get to our black folks is we're going to have to kind of speak their language and get into the media that they look at. But there has been you would think with all of this technology that exists, and I think I had repeated this earlier, that there would be much more, there would be much more attention. There would be it's easy access to find out what's going on and how this case and the new developments that are coming out. So, listen, I think in every movement, in every struggle, you're not going to have 100% participation. But you go with the folks who are willing. And that's just, to me, part of the struggle too. We gotta keep our folks in tune and educated and interested on the topic, and also fight against the injustice system at the same time.
I know you were saying just now that you work for a school, you work inside of a school. How are the teachers, how are the people within that school system kind of instilling those qualities of community to the children, so that way, when they leave that school, they're leaving with that knowledge of we need to come and form this together. We always say, it starts at home, but it also starts within that village. And for us, especially now, the village is starting in these schools. You know what I'm saying? Because families aren't what they were back then. So what do you feel is being taught about the Civil Rights Movement or the Black Lives Matter or whatever about community being brought back into
it's not being taught, to be honest. It's not being taught. You have certain teachers who try to slide it in there under the radar, but because of everything is being taught to a test these days, everything's on the test. You don't even get to even explain that to our community anymore. To be honest, like I want to piggyback what he said, it's hard to get that information out there because we don't have black activists anymore like we had in the civil rights. Most of the black people that we look to lead us now are celebrities. It has to be on social media. Those are the people who give us our information, so if they're not tagged to it, we won't know it.
So how do we, I like that. That was a good one. So how do we change that narrative and kind of spearhead it back to knowing who our leaders are? Because let's go back into kind of voting, right? There are many people in your communities who live probably next door to you who are activists, but because we don't take that time out to research and to sit down and gain that information, we don't know. Like you said something just now about our celebrities. We can tell you what they drink for dinner, what they have for breakfast, just like this. But you can go to the polls and know one person that you're voting for and what they stand for. So my thing is, how are we at this point in time changing that narrative back?
The only way I see that we can change it, and some people may not like this, we have to go back to the old way. We have to have the community raising our kids again. I'm not even going to say what I want to say, but we have to get back to, you don't have to be my mama to tell me what's right anymore, or my father to tell me what's right anymore. The community should be able to stand there and be a parent. That's what we have to get to.
Yeah, I would agree. The whole village approach still has to come back, And again, I hate to say it, the system is broken. We need radical reform to achieve the agenda, the agenda we need to get where we need to be.
Right.
And I think that touches on reparations, that touches on a whole host of issues, but the village has to come together. And we have to organize and get ourselves to a point where we can be able to put forth that agenda to say this is what we need, and then we can deal with some of the social ills that exist. We can deal with it. We don't have to wait for other folks to tell us, well, this is what we're going to do for you. No. We can say, this is the agenda, this is what we need you to do, and it has to be done. And then it also goes back even to the Brother Hill, who is in the education system, how we don't have a education system that really educates our folks about our history. I think that's fundamental on how we help defeat you know, the ignorance or the lack of that exists. So that's going to be key when we talk about having more sensitive, cultural-based curriculums, and really instilling in our children their history, where they come from. They come from a rich, productive people. Educated folk, and that's something I think that's going to be fundamental. But I think we're going to get there. It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll be right back with more Courtney's Corner. So what would you guys say that the people from the giants of the old civil rights movement would say to those in this Black Lives Matter, or in any, you know, in any type of collective of people now who are trying to revitalize these causes and bring them to the forefront and make these changes? What do you think that they would say if they saw what's happening right now?
Well, I mean, obviously to borrow Dr. King's quote, where he talked about silence, you know, the being silent, you know, in a sense is death, not standing up. So, you know, and then, you know, Malcolm X spoke about collectivity, self-dependence. Borrowing from those two, and, you know, I think that the message is clear. We got to get our act together. As a community, as a village, and I think once we get to that point, then I think then we could deal with some of the social ills we have, and then we can really go to war. Right now we can't go to war because we're not ready to take on that revolution.
And it's funny because I'm going to try to leeway to here. So in Dr. Martin Luther King's I've been to the mountaintop, he says, all we have to say to America is to be true to what you said on paper. So do you guys feel that moving forward, that dream still attainable? Have we made it reasonable progress since that time?
Well, I mean, I would say that there's still a blank check. We are still trying to get that check cashed. And I think it literally may be in the form of reparations, but again, it goes back to we have to organize on our end, have a black agenda, put our heads together, intellects, whoever, and say this is the agenda we're going to put forth. We shouldn't have, and I'm going to be honest and be upfront, we shouldn't have white folks telling us what our agenda is, or how our agenda should be, or they shouldn't even be telling us that we need an agenda. We should know we need an agenda. So, you know, it comes to a point where I think, again, the onus is back on us. We are a self-determined people, and since we are a self-determined people, we have to set our own destiny.
So I'm going to end now with this last question. So where do we go from here? Like, what do we do so that in 50 years from now, we're not going to keep having these conversations and emphasizing how much Black Lives Matter? Anybody?
Well, I mean, I would say that, listen, if I don't think we would. I'm an optimistic person, and I believe that we are on the verge of getting our act together, where we won't have to have this debate. We won't be debating or have to use that slogan, Black Lives Matter. That will be in the dustbins of history, but we will be at a point where we will actually be we will actually be in charge of our destiny
Right.
and our agenda, which will be implemented. We will actually be seeing the fruits of where we need to be, and we'll actually benefit from what where you see. And I think that's what it is about being optimistic and thinking that we're making progress.
Right.
There's some activists that think that we are stagnant, that we're not making progress, and but I think we are making progress. But there just needs to be much more effort put in to how we attack this beast.
Okay, and for you?
I think I'm agreeing with him. I'm saying the same thing. The only thing is, I think we got to stop getting comfortable. Ever since the Obama movement, it was like we made it, and we still haven't. We're not there yet. We got a long way to go.
I like that. So we do have a long way to go, but we can do it together.
Yes,
we can do it together. So guys, I thank you so much for coming on the show. Just tell the viewers, look at this camera over here, and tell the viewers where they can find more about you. This one over here, guys. All right, so we're going to start with you.
Where they can find more about me?
Yeah.
Well, my Instagram is J_McCray. You can follow me on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
My Instagram is Banking on Banks, and you can also follow me on Facebook, Chris Banks. And just look at the read the newspapers and look at the news. You'll see me on there.
Yes, or you guys can just follow him more on following Courtney's Corner. We'll be right back with a performance by Stanley himself. Thank you for watching. All right.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory.
We was once dreamers, putting that work, we became achievers. Look around you, we are believers. Reporting live from the speaker, I am the reliever. My verses be angelic, like they came from a preacher. You see it, you want it, go get it, be your own retriever. Never follow crowds, I was taught to be the leader. Passing on the knowledge, that's my role, I play the teacher. War's never there to put down a street sweeper. Give your girl a crown and treat her just like a diva. Instead of playing her down and being a woman beater. Give your man a crown and treat him just like a Caesar. Instead of shaming them down, some men are not cheaters. They wouldn't let us ball, we became our own leaguers. We should unify, let them know they cannot beat us. Be all I could be before I meet the Reaper. I wanted glory, but I only got a teaser.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours.
That's right.
Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, singing glory. Whoa. Now the war isn't over and victory isn't won, so we'll fight on till we're finished, until our work is done, and we'll cry glory, yeah, glory. Oh, 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 oh. We'll cry glory, yes, glory.
I said glory. Why is it so hard to attain? We need some reparations for the hurt and the pain that was caused in the streets. It's like a ghetto holocaust. Trying to make it to the top, no matter the cause. Yeah, we stunting floors just to make ourselves feel good. Do it again to make it seem like we live good. But what's really good? So get it understood. I'm trying to make it and get my fam out of the hood. We used to live near the woods, then we moved to the hood. They couldn't break us, so they came after us with the hoods. But we should dare to dream, that's what the king said. Gunshots rung out, now the king is dead. But the dream lives, dreams, so we should tell the kids. The dream is still alive, it's right behind your eyelids. Close your eyes and picture the glory. Then I open my eyes, cause I know it's coming for me. Glory.
When the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh,
Yeah.
one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, singing glory, 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 singing glory, 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 glory.
Yeah.
Say now the war isn't over. Say we'll fight on till we're finished. Oh, until our work is done.
Right.
We'll cry glory.
Yeah.
Yes, glory. Oh, 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 oh. One day
One day.
we'll sing glory, 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 glory.
Guys, fellas, first and foremost, I thank you guys for coming on the show. For those who did not know, who didn't participate, we had a Summit 2019 Change Start with us, and these young men were picked out of an audition pick. So let's start off with you, because they saw you already. What is your name and where you're from?
My name is Young Jay, and I'm from the Bronx.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. What was that process like? I know I had asked this like in the middle of last minute, but what was that process like for you guys working together to get this made?
Well, basically, I really like collaborating with a lot of people, because when you collaborate with people, it's so many different energies. So when the topic was brought to me, I had to really like dig deep in myself and take a look at history. I was actually watching Roots anyway.
Okay.
So that's what made me come up with the verses. So
I love the flow. How was it for you?
The same. Like when you brought the song to me, I was just open to collaboration. Had to go back and actually study John Legend, see if I can really get into the character, because I've heard it sung so much, so I didn't want to do it the same. Like,
Well, I thank you guys for digging deep and collaborating. This was kind of like one of the best performances of the entire summit. I promise you, hands down. People are still talking about it right now.
Thank you.
So we're gonna work on getting that. Work on getting this, I guess, this video made, because it's necessary. And I want to thank all of our guests for being a part of today's conversation. The most important thing I want you to take away from this episode is the power of your own voice. Each of us has the opportunity to make a difference and be the change we want to see in the current world. If the picture isn't reflecting what we want, if we don't, we'll just repeat the same mistakes as our past. As with each encounter, we hope tonight's episode inspired you to take action and learn more about how to be a part of the solution and not the problem. To get involved in any of the organizations you heard, such from Christopher Banks, please be sure to follow Courtney's Corner on all social media platforms. We love you so much for all your continued support, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Courtney's Corner.
Hey, my name is Chris Banks. Had a great time on the Courtney's Corner. Don't forget to like, share, get the word out. Great show. Enjoyed myself. Looking forward to another show.